Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope everything is great and fantastic and wonderful. Uh, I wasn't trying to make anybody feel bad yesterday for not checking in on me. I'm sorry. I was really not. It was an observation, right? So lots of people jumped in and apologized. You don't need to apologize. I don't expect anybody to check in on me. I have Em. She's here. And she checks on me every day. People seem to have some comments on the table, so let's talk about the table and the fact that I bought a yoga mat yesterday with zero intention to perform yoga. But I recently watched a video, and I think it was Stumpy Nubs. If anybody has seen it, let me know, because I'd like to recommend it to people, about sanding pads. Quite a few people that I know or watch on YouTube use carpet pad, like the carpet backing. It's not quite the same as carpet backing. They buy it off of Rockler, but it looks like carpet backing to hold material while sanding. Other people that I've seen use literally carpet, like those real thin carpet tiles, as a sanding pad. Some people, myself included, nope, I don't have it anymore, use that like rubberized shelf liner as a sanding pad. But I saw on Stumpy Nubs, he suggested using a yoga mat. And it's a genius idea because yoga mats are grippy, like on both sides. And I think this will work perfectly as a sanding pad. And the reason that I want one is this is pine. I think it was Carl that pointed out he likes the smell and the look of pine. Oh, by the way, did I ever show you guys my custom-made tool pouch? This is one of my favorite things ever. A friend of mine made it for me to my specifications to hold a few specific things like pliers, a marking knife, a little machinist square. Usually I have a knife in here, my tape measure, an ice pick, a small screwdriver, a notepad, and a pencil. But my favorite part about this is the fact that it's goes on like a paddle holster. So there's no belt loop thingy in here. This just slips into my pants. And so I don't have to take my belt off to put it on. It just goes in, pops right back off when I'm not using it. Absolutely one of my favorite tools. Anyway, this is pine. This is the tabletop in pine. The entire table is being made out of pine. Now, this might be yellow pine, southern yellow pine. It is definitely a different species of pine as the rest of the table, but I've never if you don't know, when you go to the store to buy pine, what we all call pine, it's often labeled as SPF, which is spruce, pine, and fir. They're all conifers, they're all evergreens, but they are technically different species of wood. And whatever this is, if anybody knows, before this was sanded up and plain, it's actually been planed down. Actually, this is the sanded side. This area is much more pink, and this area is much more yellow than this wood. This wood is much more just white. And so this is what I would call pine, but I don't actually know. I definitely know that these two things are not the same species. Whatever this is, it's much heavier. I've been told this might be southern yellow pine. This is probably some sort of fir. I really don't know. And I really don't care because they all work fairly similarly. They all tool fairly well. They stand very nice. They are difficult woods to work with. And I've talked a bit in the past, long ago, about working with softwood and how many people who are new to woodworking can get discouraged by trying to work with pine. The reason that we work with pine, or SPF, is it's generally cheap. You can go buy an 8-foot 1x12 in pine for like, right now it's probably around $18. Normally it's around like 12 or 15. Whereas if you were to try to buy that in oak, it would be $30 or $40. It's much more expensive. But pine is actually way less forgiving than other woods because it's so soft and easily marred. You have to do things like buy a yoga mat to work with it. Otherwise, setting it on the workbench with any amount of sawdust, or if there's any uneven surfaces, it will grind into the pine surface while you're trying to sand or manipulate the piece. So you have to be extra special careful when you're working with pine, unless you're trying to make something rustic. So I absolutely love pine. I love the look of it. I love the smell of it. Everything that Carl said is true. I really like pine. The problem is it's not a good solution for furniture. It really isn't. It's, you know, if it's the look that you want, it works. But pine dents easily, dings easily. It's a very easy wood to scuff. And so in a high traffic, situation like a coffee table or a dining room table, it's a bad choice. It's going to get really messed up. Now, I had a construction lumber pine coffee table for a lot of years, and it looked good. But it looked good because I made it to look good beat up, right? Like, that was the whole point. But this I'm not making for that purpose. This is going to be a fairly well-dressed little table. I added the stretcher in yesterday. It's going to have the nice leg dress. This is all going to be black. I'm going to stain it with whatever it's called, like Japan black. Is that what it's called? Japanese ink? India ink. I'm gonna stain it with India ink, which is just charcoal and water, from what I understand. And this will turn a super deep, rich black. The top I'm going to leave whatever this pinkish salmon pine color is, and finish it with lacquer, which will add a little bit of durability, but it doesn't really do much, especially if something gets put on it, like set down hard. It'll leave dents. The lacquer will protect it from moisture and that sort of thing, which is important with pine. Another aspect of pine that most people don't consider is that it expands and contracts way more than other woods. Because it's so kind of open and porousy, it can absorb a lot of moisture quickly. And so it will move a lot more than other hardwoods that once they're dry, they don't take on a whole lot of moisture. They will grow and shrink in tiny amounts. But this whole table, this whole construction, the way that I'm building this, I have to be very, very conscious of the fact that this top will probably expand and contract by maybe close to 1/4 of an inch, like 3/16 of an inch for sure. It will expand and contract that much. And that puts a lot of stress on this subframe if I have everything hard fastened together. Try to glue pine together like that, it'll split apart eventually. It might not do it in the first year, it might not do it in the first 5 years, but the expansion and contraction of the pine over the years will weaken those joints and it'll fail. So I do things like, to attach my top, I have these oversized holes that I will just be screwing through from the underside, so that as this top expands and contracts, the screws that are holding the top on can wiggle. They can move around and it won't be this permanent fixture. It'll allow it to expand without destroying this piece. The same goes for the legs. I'm not going to be gluing these legs on. If I were to glue this leg on and try to trust that joint, this board is going to want to expand and contract across the grain, so it's going to want to grow fatter this way, and that would eventually weaken the glue bond between it and the leg, and it would fail. So these will be screwed in place. I know I'm going to be using some, for the construction, for the assembly, I'm going to be using threaded inserts and hex bolts, so that this can become kind of a sort of a knockdown style, which was not my intention originally. My intention was to screw it together, but I think that because it's my daughter's and she currently lives with her mom, she's 17, I don't know how long she's going to live there. This might end up being moved around, and it would be nice if it was kind of packable. So I'm going to use threaded inserts and hex bolts, like furniture bolts, to assemble it, and it'll be kind of knockdown. It'll be actually really nice. I'm actually really happy with the way it's come out so far. These joints are not great. I did not get them lined up very well when I was screwing this all together, but it's all going to be hidden by the legs, so it doesn't really matter. It's going to be a decent table. It's going to be something that she'll have and cherish, and where it lives, it's going to get beat up. It's going, she has a desk, and this is basically going to serve as like a wing of her desk up against a wall, and she sits there and streams and plays constantly, so it's going to get a lot of abuse. And this top will not suffer that well, but I think it'll just add to kind of the story of the piece at some point in the future. So thank you for commenting on it. I still have a lot of work to do. I put that stretcher in yesterday. I sanded all the legs. I planed the top, specifically the glue joint here, and on the underside I planed this glue joint as best I could. I have a really crappy block plane that I use for that. I actually don't own a bench plane. It's something that I've always wanted to own, but it's one of those tools that you get what you pay for, and you can buy $40 bench planes that you could spend hours and hours and hours trying to make work, or you can buy a $200 bench plane that that will only take you an hour to make it work, and then it'll last a lifetime. And I've just never had $200 to throw at a bench plane. So the only planes I own are this little Cobalt low angle block plane, and then I have what I use to do this is this crummy Ace Hardware block plane with a really jacked up blade. It does really good kind of as a scrub plane that lets me get these joints pretty even, and then I just went over it with 80 grit sandpaper to get the top nice, and now I just need to kind of go through the grits, and then the top will be done, and then I can sand it the rest, and I'm waiting on the furniture bolts and the inserts to show up. But anyway, I should be using like an actual bench plane, probably a number 5 or something jack plane to really get this dialed in, but I don't have one. So I did it the best I could with a crappy block plane and a lot of sanding, and it turned out okay. There you are. That's what I had for you today. Thank you for commenting on it. If you want to know any more about the table, I'll try to show it when it gets closer to finished. And I'm not done any filming. And oh, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Shoot, I forgot. So we'll bring it up tomorrow. Remind me if you if you will in the comments. Remind me that tomorrow I want to talk about filming projects, specifically project filming. Put that down there so I don't forget. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is incontrovertible. It is an adjective meaning beyond question or dispute. Some minds are as little logical or argumentative as nature. They can offer no reason or guess, but they exhibit the solemn and incontrovertible fact. Henry David Thoreau, an American author and transcendentalist. Incontrovertible. INCONTROVERTIBLE. That quote messed with my head as I was reading it. The problem with reading this, like, one go, I just pick the book up and read. No editing here. Is often I read that quote and I don't absorb any of it. Like, there's zero reading comprehension when I'm reading out loud. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.